you want to me hear you shout I love you. Tell me where all the passion gone, all of the warmth. Tell me where is all of the tenderness. And there is something else that's been bugging me for so long. Tell me this, tell me if love's so nice. Tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice. Tell me why I'm sad. Me sing again. If love's so nice. Tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice. Tell me why I'm sad. Me sing again. Well, why if your nails fi do a me, bills fi pay a me, ear fi do a me, and you're making fun of me, and I'm the one with the J.O.B. So baby, why won't you give me some TLC? And there is rumors going around, say when I'm out of town, there is a man where I'm supposed to be. Too late to be begging on your knees. Hand me my keys and let go off me shirt sleeve. You can go do as you please. You can go talk to John, Peter or Steve. Because if love's so nice, tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice. Tell me why I'm sad. Me sing again. If love's so nice. Tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice. Tell me why I'm sad. Me sing again. No man no want to live a lonely life of that I'm sure. But me nah go second for less when I know I deserve more. Every day from me best when me love you come and pour it out. You pour it out. And when me ready for some my years, you lock me out and change your route and then you run your mouth. But you don't know what love is about. Well, I am sick and I'm tired and I'm sick. I don't want no more of this. Because if love's so nice, tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice, tell me why I'm sad. Me sing again. If love's so nice, tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice, tell me why I'm sad. I hear me sing, you say you love me and you care, but you never then here. You're always on the run. Now tell me this, why we can't spend no quality time? Kick back and just unwind. You always have something to do. That simple mean that love you're not true, cause only when you want to. Me hear you shout I love you. Tell me where all the passion gone, all of the warmth, and tell me where is all of the tenderness. And there is something else that's been bugging me for so long. Tell me this, tell me if love's so nice. Tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice. Tell me why I'm sad. Me sing again. If love's so nice, tell me why it hurts so bad. Badang, if love's so nice. Tell me why I'm sad again. Why if your nails fi do a me, bills fi pay a me, ear fi do a me.
Hey Lennox, present good night. I just wanted to let you know your mic off. So you check your mic. Alright then. Alright. Okay, cool.
Yes, thanks very much. Sorry, sorry about that, people. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I was merely saying in my introduction that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, led by, of course, Dr. Rowley, there is a necessity at this point to examine the mental state not only of the Prime Minister but the entire cabinet. I was also intimating that the cabinet and Dr. Rowley would obviously have a different view. But I also indicated and is convinced, and I say so with a high degree of not skepticism, but a tremendous amount of certainty, that a monolithic number of the population, especially those that are among the electorate that either qualify now and will be qualified then by 2025 to vote 18 years and over, will be and is in agreement. I say so without fear of contradiction, because when one examines critically and even at the level of being cursory, generalize, one could and cannot escape the inevitable conclusion that these people are in a almost perpetual state of the Latin expression non compos mentis, of unsound mind, it means in English. And so I am satisfied. But I also indicated, maybe in the silent introduction that I would have had, that we have to continue to examine whether it is Trinidad and Tobago next. Of course, it is a continuation of what we started last night in terms of the Sri Lankan experience. And we are going to look, as we move forward from time to time, into other areas of the world that similar developments are taking place, inclusive of so-called first world countries and developed world countries, and compare it, of course, with not just Trinidad and Tobago, but with other developing countries that are facing what cannot be otherwise described as chaotic existence. Chaotic existence because of bad government, maladministration, a bunch of miscreants who have invaded the upper echelons of the decision-making processes in these countries. And then, of course, arrogate unto themselves an untouchable scenario that they are above the law, that the rule of law does not apply to them, that they can spend our money willy-nilly, helter-skelter, and without accountability or transparency. And of course, that can only be as a consequence of one, those who are part and parcel of that conspirators, betrayal, and lack of national pride, dignity, and commitment. In other words, a bunch of treasonous individuals who have found themselves in decision-making positions in the society, and access to the financial and material resources of the country. And then, of course, by some kind of epiphany, some kind of enigmatic malfunctionality, and as I said, nestled in some kind of mental disorder, that they can do what Rowley and his bunch of opportunistic political parasites, mafia and criminals can do, and without consequences. I say to them, they live in a fool's paradise. I say to them, they cannot promise utopia and then exhibit by their conduct and action dystopia. I say to them that the pressures, the retrogressions, the deceptions, the groveling, the poverty, the destruction of families and individuals is at best for them, an act that they will live to regret, and at worst, it is ephemeral, and they will have to stand the consequences of those actions that are clearly and have betrayed the social contract that they entered into with the people. The people, of course, lured and deceived, hoodwinked, and mama-guyed into believing that somehow Rowley and they are concerned about Trinidad and Tobago. The evidence is clear. The evidence is pellucid. The evidence is conspicuous. The evidence is transparent. The evidence is obvious. And therefore, at the end of the day, as we have seen throughout history, people like these never prevail, in spite of their illusions, in spite of their delusions, in spite of their regular refrain at their regular assemblies, meaning that of the PNM, as they wallow in their own aggrandizement, claiming that great is the PNM and it will or shall prevail, not recognizing that they are on tender keg, that they are sitting on dynamite and hand grenades. Some say they are sitting on an atomic bomb, and therefore the PNM is on the verge of implosion. And of course, with that, a tremendous explosion will take place straight to the historical dustbin, where, of course, they will have to rest. They will have to nestle for the rest of the Trinidad and Tobago's history. In other words, they must be relegated to the dustbin of political history. But just in case you don't understand what I just said, and just in case you don't understand the summation of the reality of the poor government and governance of this administration, let me just tell you that the function of the government is not what Rowley and they are claiming. They cannot tell us that they have a solution for crime and then say that it is someone else's responsibility, whether within or outside of the country. They cannot tell us that they have the panacea for the economy and for, of course, an equitable distribution of the country's resources. And worse yet, enshrined in their manifesto prior to any elections, whether it's 2015 or 2020, and even 2010. And then come and tell us, or put another way, proceed in a direction that is opposite, that is a betrayal, that is contradictory, that is incongruent, that is the antithesis of what they told us and the good life that they had promised. They create instead evil policies and programs and then come and tell us with a straight face, ablum, that hold on, things are going to be better. No different to someone who puts a dagger, impales a dagger into your heart and tell you, hold on, it's good for you. Things are going to be all right. Wait until I pull it out when you were feeling pain and you were on the verge of death. Whilst they were impaling, whilst they were pushing it in. And then they pulling it out, they say, hold on. I'm pulling it out now, things are going to be nice. The pain that you were feeling, you will no longer feel. Obviously, because they would have killed all in the path of that weapon. Well, Rowley and they can be equal or can be equated to that dagger. A bunch of criminals who would tell us all kinds, but don't believe me. Listen to Rowley today in the parliament answering questions, and you will get, of course, a clear understanding as to that position and to the inevitable conclusion that you must draw as to the incompetence, impotence, and the exploitative nature of this group of individuals. And inside of that, we will look at several questions before, of course, we go back to the Sri Lanka situation last night and whether Trinidad and Tobago is next and whether we should, as a people, be wetting our home, our house, our Trinbago in light of what has happened in Sri Lanka and during the course of the rest of the week in other nations of the world. We have a duty and responsibility to make comparison. Let's go straight, of course, to the parliament today where Rowley was answering questions. You will see the arrogance. You will see the contempt. You will see that he believed that he's scoring points and that to be witty and to be answering with quips and somehow obnoxiously and for a person who is, of course, looking at that, they will see it or quickly be engulfed in a state of ad nauseum. It was sickening. But listen to Rowley as he answered questions today in the Parliament.
Speaker, given to the Honourable Prime Minister, given a non-acceptance by the Government of Guyana to utilize the Petroleum refinery as offered by the government at the International Energy Conference in Guyana in February 2023, will the Prime Minister state what is the government's intention for the refinery going forward?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I have nothing to answer in the context of this mischief by my colleague from Pointe-à-Pitre, except to say that no refinery was offered to the government of Guyana, so there can be no question about the government of Guyana and any non-acceptance. That interpretation, Madam Speaker, is the consistent approach by our colleagues here to put the worst complexion on our circumstances in the hope that it will hurt the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, what I did as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, feature speaker at that conference, speaking to a room full, hundreds of people engaged in the hydrocarbon business in all areas, I did say to the gathering, to the world, that we did have a refinery which the government does not have any oil to operate, and the refinery is available to any person or agent who might be in a position to be interested. To say, Madam Speaker, that then the refinery was offered to Guyana and Guyana didn't accept it is the mischief of my colleague from Pointe-a-Pierre.
And I want to say to Rowley that in accusing others of mischief making, as far as the appropriacy of the question is concerned, he is guilty of mischief making. Because inside of what he has just said in terms of the response to whether or not Guyana is interested in, of course, the oil refinery, there were two things that subsequently came out of it. But before I go there, I want to tell you that he said that he was the feature speaker. So notice the arrogance and the level of megalomaniac and self-serving and egotistic and hubris nature. He was the feature speaker. Well, the feature speaker clearly used it as an opportunity to offer the oil refinery, and as he would say to the world. But the fact of the matter is, he was the feature speaker of our exercise, an exercise sponsored, fomented, nurtured, and organized by the Guyanese government on the question of energy. So it is logical for anybody to say that he offered it to Guyana, and who else he could have offered it to, having regard to, one, the proximity of Guyana to Trinidad. Whether he liked it or not, but he believed that Guyana somehow have not forgotten what he said about Guyana during the COVID and the insult that he hurled at Guyana, and it was reciprocated. But of course, diplomacy would, of course, neutralize any kind of animosity lying below, and therefore they invited him as the feature speaker only because of Trinidad and Tobago's history. So he damn well used the opportunity to offer them the oil refinery simply because Guyana is the new kid on the block. Guyana has by billions of times more oil and possibly gas than Trinidad. Who else he could have offered? But that is the level of semantics and obfuscation and nonsense at the end of the day, attempting to insult our intelligence. And I say well done to the opposition. Lee, you did well by calling him out. And here it is, he's on the defensive. And as we have observed, aggression being the best form of defense. So he's defensive now. Because at the end of it all, in the newspapers subsequent to that meeting and that offer, Guyana said no. Guyana said no, we don't want that. If it wasn't for Guyana, how the hell Guyana could respond that way? The people in Guyana are not stupid. He wrongly believed all of Trinidad and Tobago is stupid. But the people of Guyana are not stupid. Guyana said no, we don't want that. You keep that. We are on our own agenda for the construction of a refinery ourselves. We don't need to send our oil here in order for it to be refined. He was looking for a deal. But in an attempt to appear, to save face, to take off all the egg off his face, when they're begging and having been rejected, as we have seen, not just in that particular case, but in other cases, such as the rejection by the electorate of the Tobago people, and then has the audacity, a kind of madman syndrome, to tell the Tobagonians, listen, Fali call election, but he, comfortable, having postponed the local government election. You ain't see the man. But let's continue. It was not just tongue-in-cheek. I think it was hilarious. And it was a very heart-wrenching and heart-rendering spectacle to see this fella who has been reduced to a mental fragment performing and as usual, as you heard him, as Prime Minister, always had to pinch himself because he can't believe his own luck. But it is said of luck, luck is when, of course, preparation meets opportunity. Let me repeat that. It is said that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Well, I tell you that while Rowley would have felt so when he entered, of course, the PNM as a member in 1974, having come out of the NJAC experience in 1970, and then under Mine Manning, his predecessor leader, and then captured the leadership of the PNM, he thought that that kind of luck was one that is sustainable and durable. He thought so. I know that he is now suffering from the reality, the disillusionment that inevitably and increasingly so, he must pay the price for the level of deception that he has perpetrated on the PNM itself as an institution, bringing it, of course, to a criminal enterprise, and the people itself, the wrath is yet to descend on him. Let's continue to hear him as he, of course, engaged in cacophonous babblings and a bunch of hilarious, nonetheless, jokey, and what is called logorrhea. Logorrhea, a pathological propensity to engage in incoherent excuses or talk, incoherent talk. Listen to him. Under pressure of questions from the opposition in today's question time in the Parliament this Wednesday, 26th of April, 2023.
Member for Point of View.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, based on what you just clarified, could you then state what is the government's intention for the refinery going forward?
Not clarify anything. It was crystal clear what I did, and it is crystal clear what you have done and what you are doing. Anybody who followed that conference would have seen what I said, would understand what I have said. I spoke to any person who is interested. And my colleague is deliberately misrepresenting this situation. And with respect to what I have to say about the refinery, the future of the refinery, I said it 1,000 times. And it requires no further repetition.
The man can't take rebuke. They blank him. You see, there is precedent for that kind of conduct. We didn't know then that the man was mad. We didn't know that his hilariousness was nestled in his irascibility, his thin-skinned and sensitivity, his quest to look good and to be good and to appear intelligent. But on every occasion, he then, of course, go back to default mood, a total nincompoop who is irrational or who cannot take criticisms and believe that he is fooling everybody. So he calls all of us in Trinidad fools. We are stupid. And the opposition is running rings around him, and he can't take that. It is not for the first time in the parliament that he has displayed that kind of exposure to his personality and character. We saw when the same opposition, true of course, which you will hear later down the road, Charles, the representative for Naparima, asked him about his presence in Guyana, or his non-presence in Guyana during an energy conference. Another one, of course, instead went to Qatar, came back with nothing, except the claim that them people who he went to talk with and them too does depend on gas. Full stop. That's all. Spend our money to go quiet in the Middle East. So Charles asked him, well, listen, right in Guyana here, Motley, the Barbadian Prime Minister, went back with 50,000 jobs potential. Wasn't it better for you to stay here and go to Guyana and see if you could come back with some jobs for Trinidad, having regard to the fact that we have a history of 100 years in the oil industry, and that we have a lot of human resource expertise, technical and professional, that we could share and therefore export at least that technology accumulated over 100 years. Rowley started to get on. I'm going to play that for you a little later. But let's continue with the existential and present situation today in the parliament and see how puerile, how simplistic, how dotish, how obtuse, and how infantile this man is, and ought not to have been in government at all.
Member for point of view.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your clarification once again. Could you then state, based on what you offered the refinery to the world at the energy conference, could you state if you have gotten any feedback from the world about the refinery?
Madam Speaker, we have said if we have anything to report that's worthy of the attention of the population, as we have done from the very beginning, we will do so. And therefore, that speaks for itself. When we have something to report, if we have something to report, we will do what we have done all along, which is to keep the population apprised so that they can be informed as to what is happening. At the moment, Madam Speaker, the refinery is there and available, and Petrotrin is open to any offers that might be made. At this point in time, we do not have anything to report.
So after all that elongated verbal and of course convoluted expression, he then said they have nothing to report. Isn't that stereotypical? Isn't that normal? He goes to Venezuela, tell us that he make history. The Dragon gas will be put into operation. The Dragon gas oil field on Venezuela side will be put into operation for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago. And a few months afterwards, no gas. No gas. He come back again in recent times. Get a license from the Americans. Of course, he was blaming them that because of sanctions, now America decided to lift some of the sanctions and give Trinidad the opportunity for 2 years to take gas from the Dragon field. He come back again to us. He sent, of course, Xiao to Venezuela once, twice, 3 times. In between there, it was the best thing since sliced bread. Oh, things are looking rosy. And they were providing the narrative in that regard. Today they have PIP. They talking about it again. The last thing we heard is that as if the Americans stupid like how Rowley think the population of Trinidad and Tobago is stupid. And they're talking about a non-disclosure agreement. Stuart Young come back with a non-disclosure agreement in a scenario where the Americans, having of course imposed sanctions on Venezuela, and give Trinidad and Tobago, in spite of that, a license to exploit the Dragonfield gas on the Venezuelan side. They have, of course, to talk to Venezuela. They can't just go and do it. It's not America owned. It's not Trinidad and Tobago owned. You want to create a serious war between us and them or what? So they got to negotiate. And what Stuart Young come back with as Minister of Energy and in the office of the Prime Minister, and therefore Rowley's caddy boy, Rowley's sidekick. The final thing we know is that it was what? A non-disclosure agreement. Who taking that? Not the Americans for sure. So they are silent now. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
That's it's frightening when he lie when I call this one. Good night, Lennox.
Good night to you.
Good night, everybody, and he lie.
Good night to you.
And it's the killing today by the carny there, boy. By whether they sell fruits and breeze and pine and thing. You know, I passed right today and I thought it was an accident. I didn't know it was a shooting.
Uh-huh.
And you tell me two police ship right there, Lennox, and none of them go to run on the bandit.
Wow.
None of them run on the bandit. They just stop on the spot there. That's all over the back and all in the front. And well, I was thinking it was road check too, eh?
Okay.
But I see one of the man on the ground, but I didn't see the other man.
Okay.
Well,
Wow.
so start going on in this place, boy. I don't know if them people are come to buy food or something and they didn't have the money, and I don't know what the man tell them. I don't know. Of course, I shooting.
All right, well, I'm going to look at. I'm going to look into it. I'm not familiar with it, so thanks very much. These kinds of updates are very important so that people understand more and more what we are dealing with, and with interventions such as yours and others, of course, we are going to make good as to the facility we have, the medium we have to share information towards one goal, to demonstrate that Rowley and them are no damn good. They are toxic, evil, wicked, and dangerous.
No, if I was there when I shouldn't dictate, they can have gone through and pull that car, you know. I would make a pull that car, make sure police get and people on them, you know. Because the people are just I don't know, a black Peter or some kind of black vehicle.
Right, well,
And come and shoot up the people on them, boy.
yeah, you are a citizen.
And they make another dollar, boy.
Yeah.
Well, they come and take people for the whole money, boy.
Heartless. And we have,
Well, Lennox.
we have no choice but to blame one group of people, those who are clearly have lost their way and has gone mad in the offices, in the public offices that they occupy. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Anything
Lennox,
else?
and I was listening to the ground report this morning too, with when Andy was asking the fella from Tobago who they want.
Uh-huh.
You know about that, right? Who they
Yes.
want. And when the man, I can't remember the man's name, he say Farley.
All right.
And it take long to say Farley, like not short, but Farley. So I believe Tobago people always have to be choosing Farley or Rowley. And if they were Farley, they might go back to Rowley. I don't think Tobago people, they don't know what they want. They know what they want, but like they know what they want at the same time.
I hear you. They're in two minds. Okay.
You understand? Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
they're conflicted.
Let's talk to them, please. Good night again.
Yes. I prefer in that scenario to wait and see, because Farley has started to make some very, what I consider to be acrid statements, and I think appropriate, when he tell Rowley how she blasted mouth. As Rowley, of course, suddenly found the voice to tell the people of Tobago or to tell the present administration, call election, and has the audacity and the temerity to overlook, as if he is suffering from some kind of temporary amnesia, and continuing with that mental malady, and deterioratingly so. He postponed a whole local government election. Rowley postponed a whole local government election that would have been behind us by January of this year, and goes to Tobago and tell Tobagonians, or tell the leadership of the THA, the administrators, call election. Is he mad? I cannot over. It is so ridiculous. It is so rudimentarily contradictory that you have to laugh. You have to laugh at this man. This man is totally insane. You have no moral authority. You are not a paragon of virtue. You are a criminal and a rapist and a pedophile. You have exploited the people of Trinidad and Tobago and betrayed them. You have lost elections after elections. Besides, of course, the national elections, which, of course, are questionable. Even that is questionable. Win what? And you invade, of course, and infringe on the EBC. And you do it not once, not only for 2015, you do it for 2022. When you did not, of course, cause international independent observers to come to the country in order to observe the elections. And I cannot, of course, overemphasize the circumstances emanating from that. And to show that the man is undemocratic and believe that somehow he could be an autocrat, he can be a dictator, utilizing and manipulating the various institutions and putting his mediocre and incompetent members of his party who are loyal to him, including the president, and believe he could get away with that. He believes he can get away with that. There must be a tolerance level beyond which nobody could accept and countenance. Nobody. But let's get back, of course, to Dr. Rowley's roundabout and circumlocutive responses. Totally puerile, as I said, infantile, and does not merit any level of deep thought, because you know it's the ass he talking. It's the ass he playing in his usual way, believing that 2025 will not come. Let him continue. But listen to him.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the Prime Minister says that it was offered to the world and not Guyana, why am I reading on the 16th of February 2023 from the Trinidad Guardian that Guyana is not interested in the Point-of-Pear refinery? Are they mad?
That is a matter for...
And listen to him now. Listen to him now. He got mad. His irascibility, his mental state has taken over. And so he is totally in beast form. Beast. And listen to him.
You and the Guardian, not for the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
So in other words, the Guardian lie on Guyana. The Guardian lie on Guyana. That's what he's saying. Yeah, I know that you can't believe your ears. Let's replay that one. That particular question that was asked.
Unavailable, and Petrotrin is open to any offers that might be made. At this point in time, we do not have anything to report.
Yeah.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the Prime Minister says that it was offered to the world and not Guyana, why am I reading on the 16th of February 2023 from the Trinidad Guardian that Guyana is not interested in the Point-of-Pear refinery? Are they mad?
That is a matter for you and the Guardian, not for...
I tell you, the man gone mad. You know, it drives me to share with you an incident, I think 2 Mondays ago. I had a virtual court matter. A police officer charged me for parking in a taxi stand on Duke Street. So I asked him if he knows Duke Street. And he said, very well. I just want to cut the story short so we can get back to Rowley, but it has relevance. This has relevance because that answer he gave there is similar to the police officer. So I asked him if he knows Duke Street. He says, very well. I said, all right. I asked him if he knows the corner of Duke and Henry Streets. He said, no, he don't know. You know what I say? He knows Duke Street well, but he don't know the corner of Duke and Henry Streets. But there was a police vehicle which he alighted from, which he was an occupant of, and from which he issued the ticket, of the infringement, the traffic infringement. So I took a picture of it and I presented it as my evidence in the court. So in the picture of the vehicle, there was a building next to it. The vehicle parked on the road, on the side of the road, but there's a building beyond the pavement on the south side, and there was a fruit stall just below the building. So when he told me he didn't know the corner of Henry and Duke Streets, I then asked him very methodologically, but to a particular point, and I think Rowley has found himself in that situation as well right now. I asked him, I said, are you familiar with that fruit stall that is just alongside or just beyond the pavement that is in the picture? He said yes. I said, right. I said, are you familiar with the building under which the fruit stall is operating? He said yes. And guess what? I asked the bombshell question now. Where is that building located? The fool, the nincompoop say, at the corner of Henry and Duke Street. So I get him to answer the question that I wanted him to answer, which he was evading by, of course, framing it in a different way. The police officer, the magistrate tell the man, come out to court, virtually. Come out to court, Mr. Smith. The man has charged you for parking up in a taxi stand, and he has given evidence that you park up in a maxi taxi stand. So, Mr. Smith, this matter is dismissed. Of course, I had to lead through my cross-examination of him to let the magistrate know that I know that there's a difference between a maxi taxi stand and that of a regular taxi stand, among other things. But I thought it was important to make that interjection. So there are many ways, of course, to skin a goat, because Rowley playing smart with foolishness as the policeman was playing smart with foolishness. He know Duke Street well, but he know the fruit stall and he know the building. And when I asked him where it is located, after he told me that he don't know where the corner of Duke and Henry Street is, he then said at the corner of Duke and Henry Street. So, of course, the magistrate, like, of course, our own analysis of Rowley, had to say that fella mad, get out of here. He ought not to be in the police service at all. But that's another story. But I thought it was important and instructive to make that intervention as well. You see, experience is the best teacher. And the more, of course, we experience, the more we can share with the population, because everybody don't have the same experience at the same time, or maybe at all in their lifetime.
Member for Urban.
So here I am again.
At this point in time, we do not have anything to report.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the Prime Minister says that it was offered to the world and not Guyana, why am I reading on the 16th of February 2023 from the Trinidad Guardian that Guyana is not interested in the Point-of-Pear refinery? Are they mad?
That is a matter for you and the Guardian.
Imagine that. You might answer the question yet, because he got caught with what? His pants down, with the proverbial pants down. So he can't answer. Because he now said that he didn't offer it to Guyana. He said it was to the world. And the astute and very, of course, experienced and knowledgeable and intellectually solid opposition, whichever one of them, ask him now why Guyana said that they are not interested. He said that's a matter for he and the Guardian newspaper. So the Guardian newspaper mad, and that he ain't mad, and that the Guardian will expose itself to a lawsuit from Guyana, because Guyana, according to him, was never offered the oil refinery. Oh, what a tango web we weave when we first set out to deceive the man gone mad. Let's continue. That buffoon.
Member for Oropouche. Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the Prime Minister advise on the justification used by the Minister of National Security to instruct the Commissioner of Prisons to question a prison visit by a judge, and thus potentially infringing on the constitutionally enshrined separation of powers principle?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, in anticipation of exactly this approach, the Minister will make a statement in the next few minutes.
So he has said precious nothing. But just in case you are not familiar with the question that was asked and the circumstances that brought it as a question time towards the Prime Minister today, let me tell you that Fitzgerald Hines instructed the Prison Commissioner to inquire from the Registrar of the High Court as to why and the circumstances why a sitting judge in a matter of a constitutional nature, because the person who brought the action against the state was saying that the Pratt and Morgan case that says if you keep a person condemned for more than 5 years, it is cruel and inhumane punishment. And so that particular individual was kept beyond the 5 years. And the state, the prison authorities, kept him in that condemned prison or that condemned cell. And so he brought an action against the state. So the judge says, well, listen, I want to go and see Rowley's National Security Minister. Find that the judge shouldn't be going there to see anything, and ask the prison commissioner to write the court to question the judge's decision. So you understand why the honorable leader, or should I say the honorable opposition member, Rodney Charles, framed the question in the way that he did. Because it is indeed the executive of which Hines is a member, questioning the judiciary of which the judge is a member. And there is a fundamental constitutional dichotomy, division, that says and speaks to the principle of separation of power or powers. And so the executive, meaning the government, cannot interfere with the other arms of government. And the other arms of government is that of the parliament or the legislature and the judiciary. Of course, there is a other role for what is called the fourth estate, or the fourth pillar, which is, of course, is the media that monitors all of them. But in this case, Hinds, as a member of the government, questioning the decision of a judge, and the judge was scathing. The judge was upset. The only thing he didn't do was to use obscene language in his response to that nonsense that was initiated by Hinds, because they believe that once, questionably, as they have been able to get into government where they are today, and worse yet, with a very tenuous, a very emaciated majority, only 22 seats. The opposition has 19. And they believe that they could be a dictator and they have a mandate to act in the way that they have. Or is it that they are so saturated with power and they believe that they can do what the hell they want because they have gotten this ill-gotten mandate? Ill-gotten. Thief the election, in other words. And can impose whatever they like and say. The judge would have none of it. And so he castigated Hinds and brushed him aside and dismissed him for what he is. I am going to bring a copy of the actual statement of the judge so that you will understand the level of hubris, the level of arrogance, the level of contempt, the level of a proclivity to be dictatorial and autocratic, and savagely so, as we have seen, as Rowley interfered with the presidency, interfered with the Police Service Commission, interfered with the EBC, interfered with the Petrotrin, interfered with the police service itself. And we can go on and on. There's some that we don't know yet, like the Public Service Commission. Do you know yet? And clearly, that commission, that is now looking at the whole question of increase in electricity, they would have infiltrated there too, because they are the ones that are supposed to recommend, even though the institution may be independent according to law, but because they recommend the people who are supposed to fill those vacancies or those offices, they expect that those persons will be beholden to them and therefore compromise and undermine the integrity and the intent and the objectivity of these institutions. It's a waste time. And we have seen it too often not to be concerned. So Rowley, faced with, of course, the Hobson's choice, was, of course, lured to make an asinine, a dotish response by saying that is a matter for he and the Guardian, because the Guardian print that Guyana doesn't want anything to do with Trinidad and Tobago and the oil refinery, which comprise the original question posed to him, that everybody rejecting that, and he is claiming that it was never for Guyana, it was for the whole world. But the newspaper is saying that Guyana rejected his offer. Can I explain, in a state of total flummox, enigma, discombobulated, believe that he could use aggression as the best form of defense and simply say that is a matter for you and the Guardian, and feel that that is how he could dismiss the question. No, we have to analyze it and recognize Rowley for his dunderheadedness and his lies and deception. As the police officer in the case that I had to use different method to get him to answer the blasted question as to whether or not he knew where the corner of Duke and Henry Street was. And an objective adjudicator tell the police officer, in other words, you damn lie, get out my court.
Member for Naparima.
Was the Prime Minister consulted before this action was taken?
Madam Speaker, I have not been in the habit, and I will not now tell the member for Naparima when I was consulted and by whom. You're very previous.
But let me tell you this. This man's so bipolarly mad. Remember we played several times when at one time he was saying they want to say publicity in the Vincent Nelson matter when he was boasting all over the place. Of course, these days he's saying the cabinet and he had nothing to do with it. We know that. But when he was, of course, when he had something to do with it, he was boasting all over the place. That them noting, the cabinet, the government noting, that you would know, you and I would know. And we keep it a secret until the appropriate time. He was saying that. And on another occasion, when the Mark bus, and like he had nothing to say, and he was cornered like the policeman, he then said, I will tell you everything I know. I ain't keeping no secret for anybody. And of course, the rantings of a madman scenario. So I am not surprised that he would respond, of course, to this question in the way that he did. It's typical of him. And let me tell you something. Rowley will make a serious jail for that kind of deliberate and conscientious attempt to abuse his office and to display that kind of behavior in public office. Quite apart from the other irrefutable and culpable, cannot escape his culpability is so intertwined and so well established and so well ensconced that he will have very, very huge difficulty with any lawyer, the best lawyers he could get, to extricate himself when the time of interrogation through the criminal justice system would have eventually reached not his doorstep, but his person, blue lights and silver bracelets notwithstanding. He loved to talk that of others. So they asked him whether Fitzgerald Hines had spoken to him, and just as how we say, no, he know nothing about Vincent Nelson. Before that, he was boasting because he expected and getting, of course, the optimum political fodder, the optimum political benefits. And when it failed, as usual, he then says, the cabinet know anything about what the Attorney General was doing. But he took the Attorney General then, talking about Al-Rari, out of the firing line and move him out of the ministry of the Attorney General one time, because he know that would have been an everlasting direct inquisition by the public and the media on that matter. So he moved him out and put him, of course, in a less exposed ministry, the Ministry of Local Government. But whether he do that or not, whether that maneuver was initiated, and we know why, they can't get away from the substantive matter, is that they pay a witness, a potential witness in a criminal matter, $10 million and counting, to try to set up Anand Ramlogan and Ramdean. Can't get away from that. I can't wait for the day when Rowley and his entire cabinet will be called to account for that misdeed and that evil perpetrated and abuse of their office and the undermining of the criminal justice system for their political benefits. So they thought.
There is errant Minister of National Security subsequent to this announcement by him.
Madam Speaker, I have no minister to reprimand, but I suspect that the opposition leader has somebody to beat.
Member.
He speaks all this dotishness. Remember, that is similar to when the same Rodney Charles asked him whether he's aware of a report coming out from the United States of human trafficking. Remember that? And that government officials, the report says, a report of 2022 were involved. So obviously it could be UNC ministers, has to be government officials from the current administration, Rowley administration. He turned and say they investigated it and it was UNC members. UNC members. But then we saw where he and Al-Rari was fraternizing with a fellow called Bullet, who owned, of course, Coca-Cabana, a well-known establishment for the ill repute. You know what I say? I say a well-known establishment for the ill repute. And of course, the subject of many raids by the relevant squad, the moral and ethics squad of the police, and only Venezuelans and children were among the victims that were, of course, freed from the clutches of those nasty, wicked perverts that Rowley and Al-Rari would associate with. And of course, today, I will bring the information for you as well. There is accusations that Balize House is being constructed on the backs of trafficking for sex, not slave, for sex. Balize House, donors to that monstrosity, that evil, wicked, evolution of steel, mortar, and brick. Gangster headquarters being constructed. Yeah, let's go straight, of course, to your comment. Let's go straight to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yeah, Lennox.
Hey, how are we going?
Adi, Lennox, I really does wonder sometimes, because you realize that some people was put out of their apartments in Port of Spain recently, right?
Yes. I was. In fact, I'm dealing with that right now.
Right, and it had women and children and them sort of stuff.
Yes.
That was involved in that. Now, what's strange about this? All these times they're saying how the government saying how the people and them owe them money and them pay, right? And they quote some figure. In any case, that amount of money wouldn't have been accumulated overnight. That would have been, even if that is the case, that would have been over a long period of time.
Yes.
They refused to put them out all them times. When they decided to put them out? Because Watson Duke going there and showing up the petticoat, showing up the neglect of the people, showing up the atrocious conditions that the people living under, and going and socialize with them and cooking food with them and building a relationship with them. They vex for that, and because of that, they put them out. I guess that is to send a message to anybody else who is perceived supporters of the party to know that when you drift left, you'll get your hand cut off, right? Now tell me, look at the weather conditions that are taking place now. You put out them people there. What kind of people we dealing with? What kind of people we dealing with? It just goes to show you. It just goes to show you. And I know that there are those who would say that you shouldn't feel sorry for them because they are the ones that put them there because they are used as a voter bank, right? But I know for a fact that there are a lot of young children and that sort of stuff and younger people who possibly would have known predominantly PNM throughout all their life and don't even know better, right?
Yeah.
So still, it is really, really, really heart-wrenching to look at that situation, to look at it and I feel the pain of the people because that can't be right. What kind of government could be promoting love and talking about how they care about you to behave in that way, to put out them people? They didn't put them out no time before, but all of a sudden now they put them out because somebody else threatening to take away the voter bank. Yes, them fellas deserve to get put in front of some kind of firing squad or something.
That's right, all the time.
Yes. Something wrong, but something more wrong with we as people, something more wrong with we. It's more wrong with we. And before I go, they had a nastiness they used to talk in Tobago, right? In the early, they used to tell, when any other party come up, you know what they used to tell their members? Take their money, take their jersey, take their rum, and then vote them out.
Yeah, eat them out, eat them out and vote them
Eat
out.
them out.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
I hope.
Lavatil too, they tell us that.
Right. I hope that the whole concept of what goes around, comes around, applies very much in this instance for them come 2025. Thank you, my friend.
Yes, my friend. Well, I want to say first and foremost, it has already manifested itself in Tobago. Tobago took all of the largesse, all of the windfall, all of the contracts that couldn't be completed, but just sign for it, and you get your money. They pay you in advance, and the contract is finished. And after that, the Tobagonians dealt with the Rowley evil, and of course, performed an exorcism on them. But I want to tell you about that particular situation because I heard Noel Garcia, that scamp, that nefarious, heartless individual, put there by a heartless and wicked and nasty and vindictive and callous individual called Rowley. You see, in that situation, because I know I've been there, and there were two instances, of course, one on Duncan Street, and the most recent is on St. Joseph Road. But I'll deal with the latter because it's the most recent, because we are doing something with the previous one as well. But listen, Garcia then made an announcement when the matter hit the media. Not to say that it would not they didn't know it would have hit the media, or it could be that they believe the people are so poor and stupid and so condescending, so humble that they will not attract the media attention. But they bust on the average, so they had a statement prepared, he, Garcia in particular, as chairman of the HDC. And here what he said in essence. The man said that there are process and procedures, and that these people occupy these apartments illegally at the detriment of the thousands of others who might be waiting in line, and that was unfair. And so the HDC had a duty to prevent chaos. Hear what? It always sounds that way. It sounds nice. It is a specious statement that they would normally have. When as Bishop Barbara Gray Burke, my leader religiously, Baptist, said that the relationship between the PNM and the Baptist community was an abusive relationship. But they had the same standard letter set out. One, they will condemn and they will say that they have been unfairly accused, as the PNM I'm talking about. Then in the middle, they would then say all what they did for the Baptists, whether they give them a apartment or they give them a bell, as the case may be. And then in the final paragraph, they will criticize them and tell them and say words to the effect that it is unfortunate, but look what Burke did and look what that did and so on. That is the pattern. I have observed all their letters, and that is the standard. You see, so long as you know your enemy, you can prescribe countermeasures because you can anticipate. There is nothing like ambushing there. There's nothing like getting opportunity to attack without, of course, announcement, because you know what they're going to do, so you know where the attack coming from. Well, in that particular case, I want to tell you what he didn't say is that those apartments of which he spoke were condemned apartments. They were condemned when the UNC was in government and there was this major unprecedented flood in Port of Spain. The East Dry River overflowed its banks and went into St. Joseph Road and other areas around Duncan Street and so on. And the apartments, the ground floor apartments, were of course inundated. So they were abandoned. But under Jack Warner, who was the Minister of Works at the time, they built and raised the eastern wall or the eastern side of the Dry River to a height where it could not again overflow its banks. And so since then, no water came into that area, but the apartments remained abandoned and designated as, of course, unfit for human occupation, because all of the people who were affected, as a good government would, they were given other apartments in various parts of the city and farther afield, like, of course, in Maloney and thereabout. So the apartments remain abandoned. And families who had outgrown their apartments, the younger ones and so on, their own children, their own family, decided to occupy those apartments that they said was abandoned. The AGC said that they were abandoned and that they were not good for human occupation. And they went in and they fixed it up nice over the years. And suddenly just so, with a fellow like Garcia around, and we understand that there was some, you know, you always have some mischievous person in the community who figure that people getting an advantage and they have to pay, or they went through the process, as the case may be. But those were abandoned. So instead of agency throwing a blind eye or come and investigate and see, well, listen, these people have, of course, rehabilitated these apartments, ground floor, at their own expense, decide to send a crew to evict them, take out the doors and so on. That's the typical thing. You know, like when you want to get rid of pigeon, you mash up the coop. Well, that is what they treat the people as. And you have, 5 children involved. A young lady come from school nearby Nelson Street, government school, and she saw all their things outside, and she moved to tears. as 5 families were subjected to that when they could have put a blind eye on that. And the argument about the owing rent, that is a nonsensical one, because they could have easily worked out an arrangement, because it's only $100, you know. But over the years, a person would accumulate $5,000 because they wasn't paying at all. No problem. Work out a payment arrangement, but you do not, of course, unilaterally, aggressively, wickedly, inhumanely, and without care and callously, and with a streak of extreme barbarism, evict the people and send them asunder. And the caller is quite right. Now that rain has come unprecedented and unexpected in the dry season, it doesn't matter whether it's ending or not, but the fact is that this is unprecedented. What they will do, so they have gone back in. The people who came to evict them, they took care of the doors and leave the doors and them there. But to only record that they did the eviction and then the people went back in right now. I trust that I'm not jeopardizing them by saying what I'm saying now. Maybe I should not have, of course, go further than prior to what I've just said. So I will end there. But the fact is that the government is so heartless and so evil. Those are the circumstances. Has nothing to do with owing rent. It has nothing to do with they took somebody or home invasion. It has nothing to do with they unfairly occupying apartments that others could use who would subscribe to remaining in the line, having regard to the backlog of demands. Had nothing to do with that. Those were apartments that would condemn the people. Let me repeat it. They were apartments, ground floor apartments in the circumstance I just explained, that were condemned by agency. Yet still, that statement. So it shows that they are deliberately attacking poor people. And it doesn't matter if children is involved and how they would look at these things. And it contributes, of course, to crime and criminality, particularly in an area like St. Joseph, which, of course, is considered to be in East Port of Spain. Just the term alone will let you know the potential for crime and criminality and generational adherence to that maybe culture of crime and criminality. And the agency doesn't find it, and the government doesn't find it fit to make an intervention so as to prevent the level of crime and criminality that we are experiencing today. So imagine they are preparing future generations to even be greater vipers in this country, if we give them the chance. But of course, 2025 must come, and Rowley and they must go, and they must face the criminal justice system as everybody else for what they have done to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. There are other things that I could tell you that I will not tell you as yet. There are several developments that are taking place, people. Stay tuned. The only place you could get it from, live and direct, fearlessly, is on the corridor transformation. Not even the ground report. Not even the ground report can say, and you see that I have not been able to say that Rowley is a rapist and a pedophile. Can do me nothing. And that people like Noel Garcia are his cohorts in crime and criminal behavior. And boy, oh boy, how I wish for the day when they will send me pre-action protocol letters. Let me ramage. Let me ramage. And as a member of the human rights organization, Amnesty International, I can tell you, everybody in the world will know what they are capable of and what, in fact, they have done. Because I will use my circumstance to expose all and bring them down once and for all and tell Trinidad and Tobago that that kind of bizarre behavior, criminal behavior, will not be countenanced in the highest public offices in the country. Will not, because evil could never prevail over good.
Prima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Given the view by the former procurement regulator that the vacant position of procurement regulator, and I quote, must be filled immediately, given the gravity of the work to be done with the recent full proclamation of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, end of quote. Will the Prime Minister indicate the steps being taken to fill the position?
That's another critical matter. A critical matter. Well done once again, opposition member. But of course, you have a wily Prime Minister who will try to obfuscate. What you know what he just said there? You are aware of the over 500 times, including Rowley, members of the cabinet, the government itself, recuse themselves in the area of potential corruption, conflict of interest, misbehavior in public office, larceny of state resources to friends and family and acquaintance and 1%ers. But the period, the term of the procurement regulator, a fellow called Munilal, came to an end in January. So Rowley and them know that. Just as how Paula May Weeks' term come to an end, and they put, of course, their PNM activist Kangaloo. And just as how they reconstituted the Police Service Commission. And just as how they wanted to remove the DPP, Roger Gaspard. But it is not as easy as moving the Commissioner of Police, because his term came to an end. The DPP terms don't come to an end so. So they have a challenge there, a stumbling block, a hurdle. And they wanted, of course, they believed that they could come out in the public and attack from the Prime Minister's side, attack from the Attorney General side, and attack from the Chief Justice side. But he remained steadfast and dignified, and of course, with a tower of power, and of course with the backings of the people, because we did rally and we went down, of course, to the office of the DPP, and we delivered letters saying that we are in your corner, Mr. DPP, and that you should do all things right to all men and dispose of the criminal justice system equitably. And in my letter, of course, as I read here already, it says specifically that Rowley and the entire cabinet and the Attorney General past must be investigated from a criminal perspective for misbehavior in public office, having regard to the Vincent Nelson matter and their involvement. So we know. So the procurement regulator is the next victim, the office I'm talking about now. They're going to put their own people. Rowley going to say, of course, it is a matter for the president, somebody who will be taking instructions from him. But the Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, and evil could never prevail. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Welcome to the corridor.
Hello.
Welcome to the corridor.
Yeah.
Pleasant good night. Yes.
Oh, good night, Lennox.
Yes, good night to you as well.
All right. I just heard you say something about Amnesty International. That,
yes.
Was it you are a member or Trinidad and Tobago?
No, I am a member. I, Lennox Smith, as a member.
You're a member.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Oh, all right. Now, with regards to Mr. Rowley, you know, some of the symptoms of syphilis, because I believe he's suffering from syphilis. And, you know, some of the symptoms are dementia, depression, psychosis, personality changes, delirium, and so on. And the way he behaves, it suggests to me that this man, something definitely is wrong with that guy. And he is a pathological liar. The biggest lie that he told was he was not going to close down Petrotrim, which he did. So everything, the PNM on the Rowley has just been a plethora of lies, just lies upon lies. And you know, lies tend to snowball.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because once you tell one lie, you got to tell another lie to cover the lie that you told before.
That's right.
And it is never ending. And it's like you say all the time, what tangled web we weave when we first set out to deceive.
That's right.
That's Rowley.
That's right.
And I hope that come the next election, that PNM really gets voted out. I really hope so, because I don't know how people live in Trinidad with the crime rate being what it is, unemployment being what it is. He keeps saying that not only Rowley, but the whole PNM keeps talking about Kamla being a racist. But if Kamla is a racist, I would say I love her racism, because under Kamla, you had a low rate of unemployment. I hear this woman sing, Lady Gypsy, sang a calypso about political cemetery, and she said, with Kamla, they were getting more money. You had live sport, you had so many other things. The program that you had where children were able to go abroad for surgery
Yes,
that
yes.
could not be done in Trinidad.
The Children's Life Fund, yes.
Children's Life Fund. So if she is a racist, Trinidad needs more racists like Kamla. Yeah, that's what I believe anyway. So I really enjoy your program.
Thank you very much.
And I try to listen to it as often as I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Well, I want to say to you, in my own response, of course, to that particular caller, that his analysis is in the right place. Because it's not just those what he mentioned, whether it be milk for new mothers who may be struggling, the Children's Life Fund, etc. But to re-emphasize that she is no racist, the increase in senior citizens' pension twice demonstrates that it's the most depressed and the most downtrodden in the society would have been heartily not just receiving, but the beneficiaries of that gesture. And it can't be only Indians getting to the age of 65. But she raised it twice, so that today is over $3,000. When, of course, when Manning and they were around, you were talking about, of course, a grant that did not suggest, or put another way, would have suggested that the government could have taken it away anytime because it's a grant. Kamla and they made it, enshrined it in such a way so as to ensure that it is a guarantee once you reach, of course, the age of 65 and all other factors considered. But more than that, if you say that she is a racist, and I want to commend the caller for bringing that line of introduction into the discourse tonight, because it is important. Then why would she have, of course, and not be selective, not be eclectic, not be biased, not be selfish? Why would she have a national increase in minimum wage, not once, not twice? Increase in minimum wage, a matter that Rowley and they are annoyed about even now, because they find that the 1%ers have to put out too much money per hour, and they have found ways in those circumstances to even revert back to the paltry and the sustaining of a poverty class. Because what they did when the minimum wages were increased on at least 2 occasions under Kamla Persad-Bissessar, obviously, instead of having people work 5 days a week, they start to make them work 3 and 2 days a week. And they cut down their hours. Or they don't pay for lunchtime, through which they have to work in those cloth stores and other small entities that could afford, because they're making money. But the level of avarice and greed and insensitivity and inhumane and non-altruistic nature of these entrepreneurs, exploitative, and believe that they could get them a dime a dozen. So you have a similar situation operating now in Trinidad, where of course they are overworking and lowly paying Spanish Venezuelans and ignoring, of course, Trinbagonians. And only yesterday, when we talked about, of course, the statistics and IMSBERT will boast and say that we have 4% unemployment, flying in the face of the reality on a daily basis, people looking for work all over the place, or are unemployed, or that they have to gravitate to stealing, or they have to, of course, abandon moral and ethical standards and principles, and maybe buy things that may be stolen at a cheaper price and all of that. The moral and ethical and the traditional values that we would normally subscribe to. Don't put your hand where it can't reach. Say good morning and say good evening. But instead, you're watching your neighbor with katai, and you're walking the streets. And of course, on the roads, you have, of course, road hoggishness and road rage. And a person watching too hard, you chuck out the eye. That is what Rowley is, the legacy of Rowley at this point in time. And he is nurturing that into future generations and the destruction of Trinidad and Tobago, and we must avoid that at all costs. That is why tonight, if I don't have the time, I'm certainly going to present it tomorrow night, with respect, of course, to the development of Singapore, and of course, in connection with and the relationship with, of course, Sri Lanka, and how Sri Lanka got there, as Trinidad and Tobago are putting the building blocks together, as Rowley is now in government. Thank God it's only 3 more years or 2 more years that he has to, of course, ramage, if you want to call it that, and generate his Machiavellian and draconian measures and evil against the people. So I want to thank the caller, because I was able, of course, to introduce, of course, all these generic benefits to the poor, so as to move people out of the quagmire that they would have found themselves in, not being able to find a meal for the day, or have, of course, their children go to school, or find resources for them to go to work, or indeed to face the groceries, as we know today, the exponential increase in the cost of living in the process. But it was this miscreant, this misrepresenter of facts, are talking about IMSBERT, saying that he get the facts from the Central Statistical Office. And I had to tell you last night that the reason why it may sound nice for him, and that is convenient, I'm sure if it was the true unemployment rate in Trinidad, 12 to 13 to 14 to 15%, he would have never mentioned it. But because the Central Statistical Office said 3%, he wants to tell you that everything is honky-dory and that you must live in that delusion and that illusion. And you see every day, either your children can't get work, you yourself have been dismissed. Small businesses and micro businesses closed down because they cannot continue. And the $22 billion that was, of course, allocated for buttressing and for keeping people in business and employed has been frittered away, disappear. And he will tell us that the country has 4% unemployment. But I want to tell you that once again, let me repeat, once people are looking for work, so they don't have work, but they're looking for work, they were fired, they're looking for work, well, that is not seen as a person unemployed. So therefore, it is not captured in the statistics as the unemployed. But instead, and I suspect in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, almost everybody is looking for work, and therefore the rate of unemployment will appear paltry or small or statistically reasonable. But the reality is that we have a high rate of unemployment in reality, something like 12 to 13 to 14 to 15%. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Well, good night again.
Good night.
And also to my favorite more on the ground report now. Asking people in life if they know how much money Rolly give out now. Let me know how much you give out. For $10 or $20 or $5.
I'm checking that.
Yeah, check it out and see if anybody could call in and say something.
Yeah,
Let me know.
Yeah, check it
Okay,
out.
Lennox.
My apologies, sorry about that. I am using slow motion to figure out the note denominations that he handed out. So you're going to get it, if not Saturday, because I'll be off, of course, Friday night. But you're going to get it on Saturday if I have not completed the exercise by tomorrow. So, yes, very good one. And, of course, another sacrilegious act by Rowley. And I have more information with respect, of course, to that and the role of Zakah in the whole process of the faith and the spiritual enhancement and saturation and feeling and development of the Muslims. And I'm going to share that maybe. I don't think I will have time tonight. It's a short one, but I will prefer to stay on course here because I doubt I'll be able to deal with Singapore and, of course, whether Trinidad and Tobago is next. And as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. But bet your bottom dollar I'll get it done tomorrow. But let's just complete because this is today. So I want to make sure that you understand the character, the demeanor, the arrogance, the hubris, and the tongue-in-cheek, and the simpleton that Rowley is in reality, but trying to play smart with foolishness and believe that everybody in Trinidad is as cognitively dotish as he.
Mr.
Madam Speaker, the former procurement regulator is not an advisor to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And this matter is a matter which resides within the purview of the President of Trinidad and Tobago.
See how, with a straight face, he knows he's doing evil. He knows that he is involved. The same demeanor, the same body language, the same pretense of being ignorant and that he has a moral high ground. The man is a rapscallion, a criminal, a pedophile, and a rapist, and you can only get deception and evil and conmanship emanating from such an individual. The man is simply despicable. And with a straight face, he say it will reside in the domain of the president. And you see how he calm, knowing full well what the population thinks of his involvement in orchestrating a PNM activist to put her in the office of president. But he acts as though and believes he's protected by the substantiveness of the law and not the spirit of the law. that resides, of course, in moral and ethical standards. He has none of that. That is why he conducts himself and conducts his cabinet over 500 times. They recuse themselves, and he is comfortable with that because it is within the law, totally ignoring the spirit of the law, the principle, and the sense of right and wrong, because he believes he can put these mediocres and these PNM elements all over the place so that he could stay in office. No, he tried that with Tobago. He even put 3 seats, and he gave them, of course, contract like peas, and they eat them out and vote them out. I expect that to happen in 2025 at maximum, before, once he has the internal and external pressures to deal with, he will crumble. He will. And I have no doubt in my mind Trinidad has, and Tobago has, that capacity.
Point of view.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, supplemental, could you state if you and your government would be willing to support a recommendation to the President of Trinidad and Tobago for Mr. Munilal Lalchan's reappointment for a second term?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the government of Trinidad and Tobago did not expose itself to lobbying in that unseemly way that Mbemba is asking.
See? So he said that Lalchan is the man who was there, but his term came to an end in January. So hear him now. So the obvious question is to him, would you ask the president if you have the opportunity to reinstate Lalchan? Because he didn't have a chance to function because it was not proclaimed. I'm talking about the procurement legislation, wasn't fully proclaimed. Here, Rowley now. That's the domain of the president, and he doesn't want to infringe. What does that remind you of? When he said that he what? Yeah, that he was not involved in the influencing of the rescinding and the reversing of the short list, the merit list that was supposed to go to Parliament with Gary Griffith's name in it. He caused the president, by his intervention, so that, of course, the then chairman of the Police Service Commission took back the list on her own volition, causing the entire commission to resign. I'm talking about Bliss C. Prasad. Things were not as blissful as she thought it would, trying, of course, to serve the toxic, rotten, evil, putrid, nasty, misogynic, criminalistic, and clearly, the devil manifested Rowley, or should I say, the devil infected Rowley. Heading, of course, a mafia enterprise within a criminal establishment called the PNM. I want to be as eclectic as possible, but of course we started early, we started on time, and of course it's 6 minutes past 10 already. Let's see if we could wrap it up as quickly as possible.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, following the deaths of Ms. Kimber Morris and her 8-year-old daughter Zaya at a house fire at Queen Anne Road, Siparia, mainly due to a non-functional appliance at the Siparia fire station, will the Prime Minister inform this House whether an audit has been ordered of all fire stations by the government to determine their level of readiness and preparedness to swiftly respond to citizens' needs in periods of emergency?
Prime Minister.
Listen to that. Listen to this
Madam Speaker,
convolution.
I will not join the member for Couva South and seek to politicize this or any other tragedy, except to say, Madam Speaker,
He's a bleeding heart now.
I'm in no position to say that the death of these people were caused by a non-functional fire unit. Madam Speaker, that is an irresponsible statement. And the government will not join Couva South in saying that, because the circumstances of the death of those two unfortunate people are not so simply described. However, Madam Speaker, more than 1 year ago, on March 20th, 2022, the Cabinet of the Government of Trinidad and Tobago approved a sum of $30.1 million under the development program to acquire a fleet of vehicles for the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. The vehicles included 3 water tenders, 1 emergency tender, 1 ambulance, and 1 chemical industrial tender, among other vehicles. The vehicles were to be assigned to the fire station at Mayaro, Pinal, and Point Fortin. This is part of the ongoing work of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which consistently operates on the basis that we strengthen where we have to, and we strengthen further. And over time, we go from strength to strength, Madam Speaker.
Ambulatory nonsensicality. He is now justifying that the government has been efficacious in the acquisition of fire equipment and appliances for the fire service, while responding to a contemporary and existential incident where no fire appliance was nearby and had to come from far distance in order, of course, to respond, resulting in the death of not just a woman, but a toddler as well. And this man will say that in 2021, they had, of course, made arrangements, $31 million for equipment, and believed that he could absolve himself from responsibility of not having right now. And the whole question of tardiness, even if they broke down, Rowley must take responsibility, the government must take responsibility for not having these tenders there on time and in place and waiting like a shopkeeper for when a fire comes, if it comes, hopefully not, so that they can respond. But he just said that and believe. But I want to show you something that is consistent with that kind of maladministration. 2 things comes out there in your face. 1, you know, when he wanted to procure boats and that they wanted kickbacks for to construct Balize House and so forth, and utilize, of course, the Church Young brother to, of course, find financial resources to satisfy the budgets of Trinidad and Tobago. Even though Republic Bank is owned literally by Trinidad and Tobago, consequential of the CLICO arrangement and the payback. You know, when it was time to find the boats, you know, the cabinet made a decision and the boats were here. What he didn't say, this disingenuous, lying, deceitful, self-serving, vagabond, what he didn't say is that they went through Central Tenders Board. And the reason, one of the reasons for the establishment of so many public enterprises, so many, such as Unicot and so on, was because of the tardiness and the slow pace of Central Tenders Board. So you understand that 2021 has no consequence, because if they were really serious, this is 2023, and the incident took place in 2023, why the hell there were no appliances, and that all you had to do was to wait on the order or the establishment or the allocation of resources to acquire the 2021 fleet and let it meet the current one. But you have none at all, and you didn't see it fit to bypass the Central Tenders Board and do like what you did with respect to acquiring the boat, government to government, etc., all kinds of hogwash, in order to get that, because that was not a priority for fellas like them. It didn't have any money for them, it looked like. So on two fronts, hogwashy talking. True Tenders Board, he didn't say that. And secondly, the incident took place now. Why it is that there is no fire hydrant, or so let's say fire attenders or tenders to avoid the loss of life and property. He didn't answer that at all. But give himself praise by some kind of convoluted hogwash, diatribe, and semantics. Can't fool nobody, Rowley. Anybody you fool is yourself. Only people you're fooling, Rowley, is yourself. Only ones. So that is no excuse that you had an order in from since 2021, and the incident took place in 2023 with no appliances, and he comfortable with that. You understand the level of criminality that is residing in this devilish individual, this Luciferian character.
Mr. Prime Minister, why do you continue to defend the incompetence of the Minister of National Security when there was a fire to reach the same
Member for Naparima.
The 23rd member of the lower house for the PNM has intervened. Listen to what she has said now in this particular instance.
For Naparima, member for Naparima, I rule your question out of order. Member for
an emotional situation.
Please.
Emotional.
Contain.
A woman died, a child died.
Member for Coover South.
And it's ruled out of order. Listen again.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, the question which found itself on the order paper was in keeping with the standing orders of the House of Representatives. And taking into consideration what you just outlined, are you aware currently that the Coover South Fire Station, which is also called the Savanetta Fire Station, and located in close proximity to the Point Lisa's industrial estate, at the moment does not have a hazardous material truck to respond to any industrial accident on the industrial estate?
Member, again, having regard to the question asked, the answers given, according to the standing orders, that question is out of order. Member for Oropouche East.
Well, of course, I think we should pause there. We will continue with member for Oropouche East in terms of questioning Rowley, but we will try to, before we do that, tomorrow night, we will, of course, look at the Sri Lanka situation, which I promised to do tonight, but of course we have run out of time, as well as, of course, whether it's Trinidad and Tobago next. It will be very, very, very interesting, of course, to make the comparison and to once and for all face the reality of Trinidad and Tobago. But I thought it was important, of course, to give you an indication, or a continued indication, that Rowley will not change. He like a scent. He is immutable. He is constant like the Northern Star. He is despicable. He is toxic. He is, of course, he has weaponized government against the people. He is belligerent. He is, of course, caustic, and never was to be a prime minister, a minister, or indeed a leader of the PNM. And I know that there are many, many, many regrets that are taking place. But thank God that he has opened up the eyes of the people, and the PNM will eventually be relegated to the dustbin of political history. Never again a rapscallion nurtured and got his formative training in the PNM as a organization with a culture of corruption, nepotism, cronyism, manipulation, and exploitation of the treasury and the people of the country, and undermining the electoral process and our democracy. No. And the 29 seats that is expected to be given to the Kamala Persad-Bissessar and UNC administration by maximum 2025 will certainly reinforce and rectify that situation as constitutional changes will take place. And I am looking forward to at least to make certain that not another one like Rowley could ever be undeservingly so and end up being the Prime Minister of this country through nepotism, cronyism, and the manipulation and the undermining of the institutions that are supposed to be critical for the checks and balances. And he has infiltrated in a typical Machiavelli and produced all kind of draconian measures. In other words, wanting to stay there, and we must pay him to stay there to do us wickedness. That will never happen. Evil could never prevail over good. That being as it may, people, of course, I want to, of course, conclude here tonight. It's already 19 minutes past 10. I have a long day and a long day today. But, of course, you know I'm committed. But, of course, it doesn't have enough hours in the day for, of course, a fellow like me. But I say stay tuned. There are a lot of things to come. And we're going to complete this exercise because you have an opportunity to not only further recognize or appreciate existential issues in the country, current events, by those questions, but how Rowley, representing the government, respond. And you know that the man is poison, he is toxic, and therefore such an individual is not a prime minister make. Or put another way, he could never have been a prime minister. Unqualified. Unqualified, so to be. That being as it may, of course, we'll go, of course, straight to your comments. Don't forget, tomorrow we look at your tomorrow, of course. Don't forget the ground report tomorrow morning from 6 to 9. Andy, Mikey, and myself. Let's hear this before.
You know, he's a man who can't take the botheration, you know. So let the door in eats ya. I wear the good Lord splits ya. Brand new music on this. You say you love me and you care, but you never then near. You're always on the run. Now tell me this.
Rowley, you dog. Low high the crime rate is in the country now, boy.
Fear nothing out of you reasoning. Why you tell me say you sleep over your mother? Me no ask you nothing, why you even bother? I know your mother pick you up in the Prada. You all live by your liar, the miss not your brother. You say you love me, but I don't really care. If you want to take bad man for fool, try no matter stay around there. If you love them, who buy the grows? Reason you scared to even drive them to school. With your face the attitude you want come take man be fool. When the running, who chase them out? Girl, me can't believe you turn big time sell out. I gossip with the same ones where you run up them out. But I can do without you. Hey, you say you love me, but I don't really care. If you want to take bad man for food, try no bother stay around here. If you love me, and what is you what drive you do? Me no like the freaky worry type. I'm gonna find a better girl than you. You see, girls like you come a time a dozen. My mama didn't tell me, but I didn't listen. Hard yes, bound for feel, she used to say. Now look at me today, girl, you are a trickster. Answering your phone while walking away, girl, you are a trickster. Yeah, I'm tired of these games you play. You say you love me, but I don't really care.
Natural beauty, you know. Yeah. No, I never been someone shy.
Yes, indeed, of course. Let's go straight, of course, to your comments. Quite a lot of you. I won't be able to read it tonight. Please, I'm extremely exhausted, but I had to do what I have to do. Jerome is here, of course. Rowley in get to play golf. Too much rain for his $10. Yes, indeed, of course. Jerome is here, of course. I think of humor is good. Ramnaran is here, of course. Sharon is here. Nazma is here, of course. So we have later guys, of course. Ramnaran is here. Enjoy is here, of course. We have again Privilege. Zik is the name. Zik Ruth is there. Good night, Mr. Lennox. It's been a great program. Thank you very much. Of course, we can pause there. So have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And don't forget, tomorrow morning, the corridor transformation will be tomorrow night. But certainly, the ground report will be in the morning. Andy, Mikey, and myself. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. Bye-bye.
My baby, no, still I stand by you. Yet there is one thing I need to know about the small matter, what you neglect to show. Show me that you love me. Show me that you care. So we can be blessed now, minus the stress now. Did I render you lonely? Was I your one and only? No, still I stood by you. Did you give me more than I bargained? Drain the love out of me fountain. Yeah, still I stand by you. Yes, there is one thing I need to know about the small matter, what you neglect to show. Show me that you love me. Yeah. Show me that you care. So we can be blessed now, minus the stress now. No word of a lie. Agony and ecstasy in a one. Turn the wheels of love in a forward motion. The agony plus devotion. No render my emotion in a garbage pan. The agony and ecstasy in a one. Turn the wheels of love in a forward motion. The agony plus devotion. No render my emotion in a garbage can. There is one thing I need to know about the small matter, what you neglect to show. Show me that you love me. Yeah. Show me that you care. So we can be blessed now, minus the stress.
never say thank you for all the things that I've shown you. No, still I stood by you. Did you give me more than I bargained? Drain the love out of my fountain. Yeah, still I stand by you. There is one thing I need you to know about the small matter that you neglect to show. Show me that you love me. Yeah. Show me that you care, so we can be blessed now, minus the stress now.
Cemetery, it's not for people like you and me. It is for all them politicians, and I dig in their grave, no fuck with me hand. I find some of them they living too long, and every 5 years it's the same old song. Some of them dead, just shame to lie down, so I prepare for them a burial ground. Rowley, my first grave for he, with joy in my heart, put him down with Lee. All of them useless politicians, only making up numbers in my island. Al-Rari, I refuse body, I leave them Muslim, them to deal with he. Big smile on my face and with maybe a hand. It's time to move trash from out of this land. Make sure he have a sardonic grin on his face. That's all he does do, that man is a waste. Bury in the back of my cemetery, turn he upside down, he face I can see. Look for the strongest grave digger to cover he. Not with the hand, put good fork on he. Gypsy, political grasshopper, I may feel little pity cause he's my brother. But like Tarzan, he's swinging from vine to vine. It's time I help you to make up your mind. Fitzgerald, Rasta City, I know they go glad to get the body. Resi on beat and dumb for all to see. Drink 2 beers and watch Coco get happy. But Kamala, I not ready to bury. She is a strong, determined woman like me, and deserve a chance to run this country. When she in power, I don't go hungry. And Calypsonian does get big money. She don't deserve no spot in my cemetery. I putting she in the center of the city. I don't care all who go vex with me, but Kamala, I not ready to bury. She is a strong, determined woman like me, and deserve a chance to run this country. When she in power, I don't go hungry. And Calypsonian does get big money. She don't deserve no spot in my cemetery. I putting she in the center of the city. Paula, you too damn lazy. You sit on a throne while women die daily. You deserve a nice spot in my cemetery. All you do is just collect big salary. Regis, you disappoint me with your racial tongue. You like you can see. Your barber does trim you with weed waka. All day all you do is sushila.
They send me down like prophets of old to cool this tongue, keep it more control. Me I get no vision and thing, neither no big message to bring. All they tell me, hey man, I'm a Calypsonian, go and sing this song through the land. Keep singing every day, remember, mommy said, but keep